Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. We are continuing in our look at operations and production in module number 7, and this is our second video. In this particular video, what are we looking at? We're looking at the topic of forms of utility. Forms of utility, because utility is a concept, it's an idea in business from whence value comes. Why is it that certain companies are able to charge a premium for their products or services in ways that are still attractive to us as consumers? It's because of the concept of utility, which is what we look at now in greater detail. And so if you take a look at this little fuzzy diagram, sorry a bit for the pixelation there, I grabbed this off the internet. The whole idea here is that on the right-hand side, you and I, as customers, as consumers, as buyers, we are going to make an assessment, a judgment about a particular product or service, whether it's worth buying, whether it's attractive to us, whether we think that we can use it, that it will bring us value. And you see value represented as that tall yellow rectangle running from 0 all the way up to the top. That's the maximum customer recognized value. Now, value does not necessarily mean price. Value means not only the monetary benefit that that product or service might give to me, what I deem as how much it's worth monetarily, but over and above that, there's also value that in some ways is very difficult to measure in terms of dollars and cents. For instance, if I'm considering a very fine jewelry class wristwatch, like say a Rolex or a Patek Philippe or some of these very, very high-end luxury brands where a wristwatch may cost $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Well, certainly it isn't simply the value utility of buying something that will keep time, because quite frankly, a $100 wristwatch will keep perfectly good time just as well. That's not why you're paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for something like a Swiss-made Rolex watch, right? We know that. There is other value besides the economic that goes into that mental and, quite frankly, emotional consideration and calculation we make whether or not we want to pay that price. And of course, with a watch like that, like what I'm describing, we realize that some of the value is bound up in emotional things like status and ego and pride and a totem or a sign that I have quote unquote arrived or have achieved some level of success. You get the point, right? Now, that's not to offer a value judgment that whether that's good or bad or whether we should make our purchase decisions based on status and those kinds of things. I'm simply saying here that that yellow rectangle value includes all of the value we place in the potential purchase of a good, a product, or a service over and above what monetary value we believe that it may bring to us. Now, that being said, to produce that watch or those shoes or that suit or that automobile, on the left-hand side, we realize a manufacturer has a particular level of cost, right? Now you see that represented by the smaller rectangle on the left. That's the manufacturer's cost, and you can include not only the cost of the materials that go into the product, but also the wages paid to laborers in production, as well as marketing and distribution costs, and all of those kinds of things. You total all that up, and that's the cost of bringing that product or service to market. Now, if a company wants to stay in business, over the long haul, they're certainly not going to charge simply what their cost is to break even. They'll make no profit, and there's no way for the company to grow, to increase market share, to become healthier with further R&D and investments and bring more products, etc. Right? So we know that a reasonable firm will over time seek to adjust the price to somewhere in this range of pricing represented by the double-headed arrow, right? Somewhere pricing their product somewhere be above cost but below the maximum customer recognized value. Why below that? Because quite frankly, economically, if you are pricing your product or service above what the customer perceives the value is, then the customer is better off keeping their money in their pocket and not purchasing. And that should be relatively obvious to all of us, right? For instance, if you are starving hungry and you love pizza, there's still going to be a range of competitive pricing within which you are willing to pay for pizza. And if you price above that, then you'll simply think of some other product or service to swap in there in order to serve that need. You're hungry, you love pizza, but this dude is selling a pizza for $400 for a small pizza. You'll probably find tacos or burritos or hamburgers someplace nearby that's more reasonably priced. That should be relatively obvious, right? And so here's the question. The question is, if this is how every buying decision is made, and that's a suggestion here, what the buying decision entails as consumers is we estimate in our head what is our customer recognized value in a product or service, and the job of the producer is to bring that product to market within this range of pricing above cost, competitive, and yet below maximum customer recognized value. Then how does one increase and bring the very most value to market in order to charge a higher range of pricing? And the text will tell you that value is created through operations, through production, through exactly what we're talking about in this particular chapter. In fact, the textbook will tell us that utility comes in several different forms. We define utility in the text as a product's ability to satisfy a human want or need, and it comes in at least 3 forms for you to take note of in this chapter: form utility, time utility, and place utility. Let us see if we can sort of suss that out for you and parse out what are we really talking about with these terms. Well, with regards to bringing value through operations to consumers, for instance, in terms of form utility, here's an example of what we mean. This is a fine men's dress shoe. And for a wingtip like this, you recognize from the photo, the majority of this is made out of leather. The uppers are made out of leather with the decorative perforated holes and stitching and cutouts and all that stuff, right? You have a little bit of cloth made together into shoelaces, and then you have some stitching in the sole, but the soles are also made of leather, predominantly leather, perhaps with a small leather insert on the heel. So it's mostly leather, a little bit of rubber, a little bit of shoelaces, right? That's what goes into a fine men's dress shoe. And for a dress shoe like this, you can look this up on the internet. Fine men's dress shoes run anywhere from, well, $200 to $300, all the way up to somewhere over $1,000 for a pair of dress shoes, depending on what you're looking to purchase. Now, why can the manufacturers of these kinds of dress shoes charge someplace north of $200, $300, $400, $500, or significantly more than that for one pair of dress shoes? I mean, come on, let's be honest. Couldn't I, as a consumer with the internet, go and find about the right quantity of leather and a pair of shoelaces and a little bit of rubber and make these shoes myself? Well, certainly I could, because let's be honest, there's probably, let's be honest, maybe about $30 or $40 worth of materials. And if I could buy those myself, well, I can sit down for a weekend with a pair of scissors, craft myself a set of men's dress shoes, save several $100s, couldn't I? Or could I? And you see, that is what form utility brings to the marketplace. Because you and I both know, let's be honest, okay? I'm never going to be able to make that pair of dress shoes by myself. I don't have the tools. Far more importantly than that, I don't have the expertise or skill or training or experience. I have no way how to convert 2 big old sheets of leather into those dress shoes. And that is form utility, converting raw materials into the form in which they are immediately useful to the consumer right after I purchase them. There's a premium to be charged there. Why? Because there's an extreme level of value that is brought by operations to take those raw materials and then bring form utility, adding value to consumers. That's just one example. I hope that makes sense. But let's keep going. When we talk about time utility, you of course recognize this logo. Most of us these days have a Netflix account. And what does Netflix offer? It offers streaming video of movies and television shows and all sorts of video entertainment. And when we talk about the idea of time utility, the idea is Netflix delivers that entertainment in such a way that I can adjust the showing of these particular streaming videos to my schedule when it's convenient for me time-wise. I get to dictate how and when and at what schedule, on what day, at what time of day to watch what particular parts of the show. And quite frankly, if I don't want to watch the entire show, I can just hit the pause button, turn off the television, come back and pick the film or the movie back up where I left off. That's the idea of time utility, making goods or services available to consumers based upon their time convenience and flexibility. And that should be relatively obvious. This is, of course, something that wasn't always available. It wasn't always a form of time utility. But this is a good example of being able to deliver products or services in such a way that we have the advantage of time utility. And for that, that's why I'm willing to pay a premium, because there is value added in time utility. Let's keep going. Place utility. And of course, what is this a photograph of? This is a photograph of a typical multiplex movie theater with looks like convenience lounge seating, and possibly nowadays the luxury theaters have food delivery to your theater seat. And of course, what's the idea of place utility? When it comes to a movie theater, the idea of place utility is that all in one place, close to your home, you have available to you choices of 20 or more movies available when and where it's convenient for you. Multiple showing times, perhaps multiple theaters, right? And you get to experience it at a place that's convenient to you, and all of these choices centralized in one location. You don't have to drive too far to find, well, I have to go to this town to watch this movie, or to this town to watch that movie. No, they're all available, or at least 20 or more available in one movie theater. And that is a form of place utility. There are other examples of place utility, of course, right? A nearby Italian restaurant near your home. A shopping mall convenient to where you work. These are all forms of place utility, bringing value by making goods and services convenient to you in terms of proximity and geography. Time utility, right? Netflix is simply one example, but there are others. There's an aspect to ride sharing, right? Lyft and Uber, which is time utility. In other words, bringing you on-demand transportation on your schedule, letting you know exactly how far away the car is and when it will be coming to pick you up, right? You don't have to wait for a bus schedule or a train schedule. You can call as soon as you hit your smartphone, and within a few minutes, that Uber or that Lyft is there to pick you up. Another example of time utility. And of course, form utilities all around us, from the clothes we wear to the automobiles we drive to any kind of material good we have in front of us. The laptop computers, the smartphones we have, all of these kinds of things are example of what? Form utility. Goods manufactured from raw materials in forms that are useful to us, perhaps in ways we never would have even dreamed of. And that adds great value to our lives. So indeed, operations, production of both services and goods brings significant and varied levels of utility to us as consumers and users and buyers in all sorts of ways. These are simply three of the ways utility is brought to us, the three predominant ways that you'll need to know for the content from this chapter. Form utility, time utility, and place utility. I hope that's useful. We'll see you in the next lecture.